who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Got a deck carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they've got you covered.
You're listening to JoCo Community Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Reach Across Johnson County segment on JoCo Community Radio. You can join us live here on Facebook or download the TuneIn Radio app. It's free, where we are live 365 on JoCo Community Radio, the voice of Johnson County, Texas. Reach's mission is to support safe and healthy choices vital to the well-being of our youth, families, and community. This show will guide you, educate you, and inspire you to be a part of the solution and to reach out and help make a difference in our communities. What began as a local movement in the city of Midlothian grew to include programs throughout Ellis County with only a few years and eventually expanded into our neighboring Johnson County, Texas. And so here we are today. And I am one of your hosts, Shari Phillips, with Reach Council. And I'll let my co-host introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Vasquez.
And I'm Erica.
And we are very excited to have a special guest in studio with us again today. She is actually coming. This is her second visit with us. We have Sarah Herrera. She's with the Healing Collective, and today our topic is going to be how to talk to your kids about trauma and how to help them deal with trauma. And Ashley's going to share some information. Do a bio.
Yeah, so Sarah Herrera is a licensed clinical social worker with experience providing therapy services to students K through 12 and in higher education. She is currently a doctoral student at the University of Texas at Arlington with a research focus on student well-being. She is also the co-owner of the Healing Collective, providing individual and group therapy virtually and through nature walks. So welcome back.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
We are so happy to have you with us today. And I did have one announcement. We're going to be doing a Let's Talk About QPR training. This one's going to be held in Ellis County at the Waxahachie Police Department. This will be on December the 6th. And I believe it's going to be at 6 p.m. So we'll have more information on that coming up as more of the details start coming in. So if you're in the Ellis County area or nearby, even in Johnson County, and you would like to come over and do the Let's Talk About QPR, and that's with the is it Elizabeth Jordan Elizabeth Foundation. And we are so excited to have them on. I know that Erica actually participated in the one that they did here in Johnson County, so it was good information, correct?
Yes, if you have any kids or if you're around a lot of kids, maybe you're a youth leader of some sort, this will be a wonderful opportunity for you to learn about possible suicide signs, what to watch for, what to do, how to help somebody that's in that sort of position.
Right. And when we actually had her on the show not too long ago also to talk about it, and even just in our conversation, I learned a lot from that. But I'm really excited about doing the training, and thinking about you need to ask more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we were just talking before we actually started that that you said that you were glad to see things like this going on in our communities, that more people needed to be aware. And I was reading the statistics too that even like first responders, they have such a high suicide rate. And so if you have a loved one that is a first responder or something, I mean, this may be some good training, to have the information, things to kind of watch for. So we would love to have you come and join us again. That's going to be December the 6th at the Waxahachie Police Department. And as I said earlier, we're going to be talking about how to talk to our kids about trauma, and how we might be able to help them be able to cope or to deal with that trauma. I know that there's been a lot of things in the news of late, and I know that from the last time we just touched on it very briefly in the conversation, but Uvalde had not happened all that long ago, and we have young kids that were getting ready to go back to school, and they were asking questions. And of course, there's been things in the news again here recently with school shootings at colleges or off campus and things like that. But what kind of things can you maybe share with us, or how to address things like that? Because I mean, you hear things on the news all the time, and then kids question you. You need to kind of be prepared.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad we're talking about this today, because, like you said, it's unfortunately the way of the world. This is a daily occurrence almost. But I think it would be kind of important to kind of back up a little bit, just a little bit, and just kind of define a traumatic event.
Good idea.
So a traumatic event can happen in someone's personal life. It could be something that is something like a car wreck, something that is life-threatening, a car wreck, or perceived to be life-threatening, abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, that kind of stuff. But also for kids, especially, a huge change in their life, like death, the death of a loved one, Even, sometimes a breakup can be traumatic.
Right.
So there's that kind of trauma, but then there's something called secondary trauma. And I think that's kind of what you're referring to, Sherry, is when we see things on the news, when we hear about these traumatic events, they may not happen to us, but our brain perceives it as it's happening to us.
Right.
And so we can have some of those really strong reactions, physical reactions to secondary trauma.
I know because, talking about Uvalde in particular and everything with it, it took place on an elementary school campus. I think it hit me probably harder than any of the, some of the others. And I think part of that was because my daughter's an elementary school teacher. Uh, the age of these kids were the age of my granddaughters. And it just like really, had a profound effect on me. And I was very emotional for a while. But I can imagine on a child, when they see something like this and they don't understand,
Right.
what's the best way to address that with a kid?
Yeah. So, I would say the first and foremost, like you said, Sherry, these things are scary to us as
Mhm.
adults. And so I think a big priority is kind of getting in touch with our own emotions
Mhm.
and making sure that we are processing those emotions too, because we don't want to accidentally kind of put those fears on our
On our
kids as
kids, yeah.
well. So making sure that you have support, friends, family, therapist, whoever, a church leader, just somebody that you can kind of process those things with, and then once you've processed them, then you can also kind of talk to your kid. And I think it is also important to just be honest that this is scary. This is scary for for me as a parent. This is scary for me as a teacher, whoever the
Mhm.
adult is. Just kind of validate, like, yeah, this is scary for me too. But the most important thing is that we all love each other and we're all looking out for each other and trying to keep each other safe. And that's that these scary things will happen, but that family is always going to be there. So just kind of validating and then really just reminding them that, again, we are all here as a family protecting each other.
Do you recommend, like, on certain things that maybe I know, like, when they for instance, during storms and stuff like that, if
Mhm.
something was to happen, kinda have a family plan put into place.
Sure.
So, in talking about, like, the school shooting and stuff like that, should we prepare I know the schools are starting to do a little bit more,
Mhm.
but, is that something as a parent that we should talk to our kids about, "This is what, you should do," or, um, I guess reinforce what the schools want them to do as well, but,
Yeah. Well, I think that is a great idea of, as a parent, just kind of even getting to know, what does the school do?
okay.
Just what does a lockdown look like? Because I would say the generation that is our parents right now, they didn't have to
Right.
go through those drills. And so even just asking your child, hey, what do y'all have to do? And maybe if you feel more comfortable, also talking to a teacher and saying, hey, my child is asking questions about this. I'd love to know about this plan so we can kind of talk through this plan as well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But yeah, in terms of what schools actually do, it kind of varies. But I remember when I was a school social worker, we would have turn out the lights, make sure all the doors are locked, hide under your desk, or find maybe the teacher would have everybody gather in a certain corner of the room where, if somebody could peek in, they couldn't really see at that
Mhm.
angle. And I remember, just as an adult, just your mind starts to wander even though you are safe. There's actually, it's just a drill. Your mind just starts to wonder of, like, I would often be in the special needs classes, and sometimes kiddos just don't even understand the concept of
The
this
drill.
of a drill. So it's if it's something, I know, if I was experiencing those wandering thoughts of what if and what could happen, I know kids are doing the same thing. And it's so, even if they're not exposed to that violence, they're still exposed to the potential. So with drills, which are obviously good ideas, we should always be prepared. But that does kind of when you combine that with the news,
Mhm.
it kind of can accelerate that anxiety. And
Mm.
when you're in that drill you're supposed to stay silent for several minutes, so you're not even allowed to talk to your friends. Your mind can just go different places.
Right. And as a kids, they're probably going to be crying and things like that, which kind of reminds me. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a school teacher, and they happened to be in the area where the storms that came through, recently, and they were having rotation and stuff, and they were telling people, uh, to get into their safe zones. Well, it was right at the time that school was about to let out, so the schools went into lockdown. Some schools, I think, actually, you know, they anticipated the storms, and so they let kids out early that day, but those that were still in session, then they went into lockdown, and, they were talking about, kids were crying, and they were trying to keep people calm.
Yeah.
There was another kid that threw up everywhere because they were so scared, and it's like so, there's a lot of fear there. Of course, I was scared too, when you start talking about storms. But I guess the more we plan for things, make it, I guess, a routine, that it just kind of kicks in. I'm guessing something like that might be good,
it
but
can be helpful, but also I think when somebody is anxious, um, a lot of it is because they're anticipating what could
could
happen in the
happen.
future.
Okay.
But we're not mind readers.
Yeah.
We can't predict the future. And so as a parent, or, a teacher, whoever is a professional working with children, yes, you want to validate those concerns, but also remember, hey, in the here and now, we're safe today.
Okay.
And we don't know what's going to happen. Great things can happen, bad things can happen. But that's part of life. But also part of life is enjoying what we have today, and
Yes.
being in the here and moment, in the here and
now.
in the here and now.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I trying to say? So yeah, planning is good, always planning, but also I think it goes back to not allowing your fears as an adult kind of
Like to pass it on to them.
pass it on to them
Yeah,
of like,
feed their fears.
you remember this and remember that. Like,
Mhm.
kids just want to be kids. And so allowing them to be aware, but also allowing them to just kind of not
Not
have
have to worry
worries,
about.
not worrying.
So
Yeah.
how much is healthy for a parent to actually share? Because I'm also thinking about ages, and I'm also
Mhm.
thinking about, like, I could see some parents scaring them too much or sugarcoating too much out of
Yeah.
trying to protect them, and I'm just wondering if there's a balance or
That's
finding that hard
yeah.
balance. It's difficult, and depending on what age and trying to find the correct terminology to express your feelings and stuff, I think
Right.
it's so difficult.
It is. And it kind of reminds me of, I was reading this article one day about how, especially Gen Z and the generations that are coming after Gen Z, they have never known a life. Or most of their lifetime, the country was at war.
Mhm.
We had September 11th happen, and that was a collective trauma. So families were hyper vigilant, and so you're raising, and so even from the start of little ones, experiences, adults were just always have been on edge and have been on edge ever since. So that anxiety does kind of trickle down, even if little kids don't necessarily understand everything that's going on, they can
Mhm.
sense that energy. And so again, I think I really do trust that parents know their child best, and y'all will know what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And at the same time, making sure that you are just kind of checking in with yourself and saying, hey, is this something that I am actually experiencing a lot of anxiety about?
Mhm.
And that's something I need to address, because a healthy parent is also producing healthy children.
Absolutely. That's a good thought.
Yeah. But in terms of, Ashley, you were asking, like, what kind of content, at this point, unfortunately, we've had so many experiences that things like, Sesame Street will have videos on how to respond. So there's a lot of different resources out there for, um, you know, for I always recommend Sesame Street because they kind of have very evidence-based ways of talking to kids about trauma, whether it's a weather, hurricanes, school shootings, even things that are on personal levels, like your parent going away. Maybe your parent is in the military and they might need to go away for a long period of time, and so preparing your child for that. So Sesame Street's a really great
Really good
resource.
resource. Okay.
Also with older kids, I think it's important to just be direct and express that yes, this is a scary thing, and you don't want to necessarily just like overload your child with your own emotions, but you do want to share enough to where they know that this is a collective thing. It's not just them that is, they're not crazy or they're not overthinking things. Like, yeah, this is
It's
actually
valid.
this is very valid.
Yeah.
And they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, I remember a lady telling us kind of an experience that she had with one of the children, and she'd said that the child said something about wanting to go to heaven. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And the child had been told when grandma died that she went to a better place and she was no longer in pain. And because the child had heard that, they thought because they were in pain that they wanted to also be in heaven with grandma.
And that's kind of, it makes sense, right? Because they don't understand how to get to heaven. They don't understand
Right.
that there is that permanent process. I think especially kids, it takes some time for the gravity to sink in that death is permanent. And so when a little kid says that, it is a little scary, but again, kind of educating them on and being transparent. I've had a lot of families that I've worked with, they've been concerned about when there's a death in the family. Well, should the kid go to the funeral and all that stuff? It is, I think it's every family's personal choice. But there's a lot of research that says when you have direct and honest conversations, kids worry less because you're just kind of, you're validating, like Ashley said, and you're also just kind of filling in the blanks, because kids can make all kinds of assumptions about things. And when you take the time to explain things like death, like traumatic events, when you take the time to explain some of those things, kids will actually start to realize, oh, well, whatever I was thinking didn't make sense anyways. And so I'm glad you cleared that up.
So do you think that there's an age though that's, too young? I know the question you just said about whether or not to take kids to a funeral. I've always had mixed feelings on that too. Because everybody's emotional and crying and things like that. And I'd wondered how kids actually sometimes process that, if they would get upset seeing everybody else upset, or if that would help them even, with maybe the grieving process. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I would say honestly, in my opinion, I do think it is appropriate. I think it's healthy because death is a part of life.
Right. Okay.
And normalizing, death is very taboo in our society. We don't even like to deal with it. And so if we can be a little bit more direct and say, this is what happens. For example, my father passed away when I was 5, and I'm pretty grateful to have had that experience to go to the funeral. Looking back, and I've had, when I've talked with clients who are older, and they've had a death in the family when they were younger, they do talk about that they felt like they didn't really get any closure.
Okay.
So it is scary. It is so scary to expose a little one to something so sad very early on. But at the same time, when you're exposing you're not just exposing them and just like abandoning them. You're
Right.
exposing them and you're also saying, I'm here, you are safe, you are loved, and we're gonna get through this together. And so when you don't talk about those things, it's almost kind of unintentionally you're telling your child to deal with it alone.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of processing that at the moment.
It's a
so
lot.
it's-
Well, and everybody, obviously, again, everybody has a different perspective. But I do know, in terms of wanting to part of overall promoting mental health and well-being, part of it is normalizing these
Normalize.
things.
I know, because the more I think about it, the more, I mean, it really does make a lot of sense. And I guess, if the situation was to arise and everything, I may think totally different about, yes, let the little ones, come and be there. And, a lot of times, funerals are supposed to be a celebration of life. And, that could be a good thing for them to be exposed to and help give closure. So that gave me a whole new way of looking at it. So I like that.
Well, I was gonna say that when my father died a couple of years ago, I waited to tell my son. He was around 8. So I didn't tell him right away. I let him go to school the next day and kind of try to keep things normal.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
then I did talk to him and tell him what happened and just kind of what I thought would be good wording for his age group.
Yeah.
And then he did go to the service. I mean, obviously there was like nobody that I would trust to keep him at that point, but I also felt like he was old enough.
Okay.
And being close to my parents, I felt that he should go. But I
Right.
feel like it was handled well. And like Sarah said, just having him there and getting to experience that and knowing kind of what it is and what it's about. And yeah, that Papa's gone and he's not coming back.
Right.
And there's that permanence there with that. I don't know. I feel like it was important for him to go and to kind of see that. And I feel like it was the right thing for him at that age.
Well, that's
But
good.
I did talk to him before and I talked to him after
Yeah.
and kind of explained, I was like, there's going to be a lot of people there. And I said, a lot of people are going to be crying because they do miss Papa. I said, and it's okay for you to miss Papa. And, if you want to be sad right now, it's okay.
Okay.
And just kind of watch them for cues and see
Mhm.
how they're processing it. And if you feel like it's a little much, then maybe, you can step out of the room or ask a family friend to step out with them. But
Okay. What do you think about giving a child that may be, maybe old enough to understand, giving them the choice of whether they go or not? Is that
oh, I definitely gave him a choice.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there definitely is a choice, but I love how how you handled it. I think it should be about an informed choice of this is what we can expect. There will be people crying, and but at sometimes. Like in moments like this, sometimes it feels good to cry with everyone else.
can be cleansing? Yeah.
And so, having just kind of helping them anticipate what could happen. And if they want to stay home, yeah, that's totally fine. And making sure that that you communicate that you are okay with them staying home. Like
Okay.
nothing is going to change. Papa or dad or whoever still loves you no matter what, up in heaven, and they're watching you whether you're at the funeral or not.
Yeah.
They're here with you whether you're at the funeral or not.
Well, that makes sense. That sounds good.
And that for him,
was
I
really
also
good.
explained that it was, for me, it was a chance to say goodbye for the last time. And
Yeah.
just kind of, and, if he wanted to say goodbye and, obviously I asked him if he wanted to go up and, visit
I
or
didn't
not,
see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
or stay at the pew. And that was fine either way.
That's good. That's good. And I think I was probably around 8 the first time I went to a funeral. It was my grandfather's, and I have bits and pieces of memories from it still. But yeah, I'd kind of wonder. I mean, I'm glad I went. And I guess as I get older, some of the memories kind of begin to fade and things like that. I was 17 when I lost my dad, and of course it was traumatic for me to lose my father, but it was healing to a certain extent because, hearing people that had talked about, works with my dad who he had counseled, and things like that. My dad was real big on sharing Christ with his coworkers. He wore overalls, but he kept a little miniature Bible in his pocket. So he was always talking to people. And there was somebody that had come up, and it was after the funeral had been a couple of years, and he came up and asked me if I was Vernon Sauter, and I said, yeah. He says, I just wanted to tell you how important he was to me, and led me to Christ, and and it made me feel really good, that knowing that my dad did that, and even later on, hearing people that talked about or how he touched their lives and stuff like that, that's real important. Well, I guess we're going to commercial break. That one snuck up on me. I'm sorry. Stay tuned. Come back for the second half of Reach Across Johnson County. Thank you.
Wilfred Brimley for Loafing Dog.
I'm Wilfred Brimley for Loafing Dog. When I get the hankering for a hot dog, I go to Cleveland, Texas. Just a couple blocks off the square, they got Loafing Dog. They got the Neely Dog, the Mary Sunshine Dog, the Casey Dog, and the Shirley Dog. Why, they even got the Pacer Dog, the Brooklyn Dog, and the Jim Dog. Can't forget the Shane Dog, or the Joy Dog, and the Monty Dog. I like that fool. The Nikki Dog and the Braxton Dog round things off. Why, they even got a kids menu too.
Loafing Dog, 208 East Chambers Street, Cleveland, Texas. Lunch, catering, or takeout, plus outdoor seating. Phone numbers 817-556-1040.
This is Wilfred Brimley. And don't forget, Loafing Dog won't give you diabetes.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Well, welcome back to the second half of the Reach Across Johnson County segment on Joco Community Radio. Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out the lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more is brought to you by Patriot Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844.tex.hail. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more at thetiffy.com. All right. Well, we're talking with Sarah Herrera from the Healing Collective, and we've been talking about how to talk to kids about trauma. We kind of talked about death just before the break, and how to talk to the kids about that and whether or not to have them be involved, and got some really good information, and some Erica shared how she dealt with that situation, which was really good. One of the things I did want to mention that so if you're actually watching our show from our streaming platforms and you're watching live, sorry about that.
I just had to giggle.
Yeah, no. If you're watching us live, drop an L for live. And if you're watching a replay, drop an or so we can where we can kind of track how you're tuning in. But yeah, it was something that we were just recently adding. We need to get a little bit more information. But let's kind of talk about some of the signs of traumatic stress. What can you tell us about the signs?
Yeah. So with again, kids express things much differently than adults sometimes, especially when they don't have the words to express. And so for younger children, you might see some changes, like for example, even bedwetting. If somebody is potty trained and maybe a 6 or 7-year-old kind of regresses and goes back to bedwetting, that can be a sign that something that and it's also followed by something like a death or something
Right.
traumatic. That could be a sign that they're not processing that as well as they could be. And just but there are, if we're talking about secondary stress, it could just kind of be over anxious, being just incredibly worried and asking a lot of questions about what if this happens and what if that happens. But in terms of older kids, I mean, even younger ones, there's also irritability, kind of that those acting out behaviors, where throwing things, or for teenagers sneaking out, kind of starting to maybe experiment with alcohol and drugs. A lot of that, it's not necessarily a social pressure. I mean, sometimes it is, but a lot of times it is a sign that there is a lot of distress,
Okay.
that might be that something may have happened. And then also just the maybe reoccurring nightmares about the experience. Again, for example, if a child got into a car wreck, maybe they're having nightmares about that car wreck, or maybe they're afraid to get in a car again.
Right.
So just, there's going to be big signs like that, but then also kind of the littler signs of maybe just kind of withdrawing from the world, or losing interest in things that they once had interest in, and also kind of, I don't want to scare anyone, because these are actually just normal responses
Okay.
to a traumatic experience. These are things that just kind of happen. But if they persist, usually it takes about a month for somebody to be diagnosed with PTSD.
Okay.
So if it lasts more than a month, maybe it is probably a time to talk to your doctor, or a mental health professional. But also, kind of just normalizing that this something traumatic happened to your body, and this is your body's way of just kind of healing. And it might not feel like healing, but it takes a little bit of time for your body to kind of return to a state of like where it feels safe.
Okay. So do you recommend, so let's just say that there was an accident or something like that, and a parent is noticing, a slight change or something in their child. What do you recommend that they do in the here and now?
Yeah. So I think again, it always goes back to just directly talking about it, because when a trauma happens, the minute it's over, your brain, and this is with children and adults, your brain immediately starts to kind of rationalize, like, okay, what happened? How did this happen? It kind of just tries to make sense of the trauma. And that's a good thing, right? But in sometimes, uh the narrative can kind of turn into, there was something that I did that was
Mm.
wrong. So your little one's brain is processing all of these things, and they might be accidentally blaming themselves for something. I'm
Okay.
the reason that this happened. And so, just kind of reassuring and normalizing, hey, this was a scary thing that happened. It makes sense that you're still scared, and it's probably going to take some time. But helping them focus again back to the here and now. You are safe now. This thing that happened is no longer part of our lives. It happened in the past, and so you're safe now, and you're here with us now. So kind of, I guess, twofold. One, again, just kind of acknowledging those fears, validating, and then also, just normalizing some of the things that are happening to them, and also just asking, do you want to talk about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm recalling something in particular that was kind of traumatic. And, sometimes kids, when they get scared and stuff like that, they want to come and sleep in mom and dad's room and stuff like that. Is that good? Or I know sometimes it's hard to say no,
Yeah.
I'm more like, okay, come in, crawl in the bed with us, type deal. So what are your thoughts on, is that helping or hurting or?
It's really hard to say because every child is different, right?
Okay.
And again, the parent will know, your child best. But if you find that this is something that's wanting to be, that the child's wanting to sleep with you every single night
Mhm.
and they haven't had that interest in the past, that's probably, you might want to allow that. That's okay. But also it's an opportunity. It's an invitation to have that conversation of, well, what is going on? Why do you feel like you need to sleep with me at night? And so helping them find the words
Okay.
for, you can definitely allow that to happen and also help them find the words.
Okay.
Because when they find the words, then you can kind of reassure them and say, well, that thing isn't going to happen. Or, maybe let's try sleeping with a nightlight tonight. There's a lot of different, it, having them express what's actually going on. You don't have to kind of wonder like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Because when you have that information, you can say, oh, well, that's a problem we can solve.
Okay.
We can have a nightlight tonight, or we can do this, or we can do that.
Just keep them where they feel safe and comfortable then. Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
I would my kids, if there was something that was going on, maybe, it wasn't quite traumatic, but, if they didn't feel good or something, and
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, you can have a night, but you're going to sleep on your bed on the floor. Like,
Okay.
I make you a
Make
little
a pallet.
pallet.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because especially my kids are big. They're big to sleep in my bed after like 2.
But I think it's important to remember that, even you might, like, as an
Right.
adult, you might feel like, yes, I want to cuddle with my child right now.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on the situation and how you are feeling, how you feel about, your child sleeping in the bed, and just kind of gauging what is happening and what do I need, what do they need.
Okay.
Or I would go sit with them in their room and say, I'll be right here until you fall asleep. And sometimes that was enough to offer that
Yeah.
security, that feeling of comfort.
That's good. That's
Mhm.
good.
It's a heavy topic, isn't it?
It is a heavy topic.
But it's but honestly, there's something called adverse childhood experiences.
Mhm.
Y'all are
The
familiar with
ACEs.
ACEs. That happens, like, pretty much everybody is going to go through a traumatic experience in their childhood. And so much evidence points to, first off, kids are resilient. They're so resilient. They can bounce back so quickly, way quicker than adults. But
That's
part
true.
of that bouncing back, there's a lot of evidence that says as long as if there's at least one adult in their life that is supportive, and makes them feel safe, then it kind of is a protective factor of all of the consequences that could happen as an adult. So again, it's hard for us to talk about these
Mhm.
traumatic things, but at the end of the day, we as adults have to kind of be the ones responsible to model that, hey, that it's okay to talk about these heavy things. We don't have to carry them within ourselves forever.
I know, because sometimes just watching the news and things like that, there's a lot of really bad stuff that's been going on, or depressing stuff, and it's one of those deals where do you want to let your kids watch TV? And there's so much violence on TV, and then of course video games and stuff on you know social media can be tough. And I know here recently, bullying was a really hot topic. I think to a certain degree it still is on knowing how to deal with that, because I think that can be very traumatic for kids, and on knowing how to cope with even, somebody being mean to them, and as a parent or grandparent, you want to protect them, and tell them that sometimes it's, unfortunately, they may be having a problem that we may not be aware of, and this is their outlet or whatever. But yeah, just, I don't know. There's so much stuff that kids are going with these days. It's hard to know how to kind of direct them on certain things.
Yeah.
Do you recommend, how soon do you recommend, like you said, seeing a doctor, or maybe talking to a specialist?
I was kind of wondering that, like, at what point do you think that they need a professional intervention?
Well, I think if something is traumatic happens, I think every adult in their life should be at least aware of it. So
Okay.
contact,
That's a good.
tell the teachers, tell the
Okay.
principal this happened.
Okay.
People at the daycare center, just people who are going to be adults who are going to be around your child, let them know so that they can also observe, because you're not always going to be around your child.
Right.
So, you don't necessarily immediately have to, put somebody in therapy or anything like that. Just kind of see, like, gauge, like, what's going on. And then at some point, again, usually there is a little bit of that adjustment period, but some people will say that just kind of talking about it immediately will kind of help mitigate the longer lasting impact. So it could just be that teachers or parents are talking. But if you feel like maybe this kiddo needs their own private space, it might be a good time to just kind of immediately put them in therapy.
Okay.
But also, as a therapist, I've also seen that happen, and kids are just like, I don't really care. I don't. Yeah, it happened. It's not a big deal. And it isn't until they get a little bit older and they look back
Back.
on that, that they're like, oh wow, that actually did impact me. So putting a 5-year-old in therapy, it can be helpful, but also if that 5-year-old isn't really displaying any signs, maybe just kind of let them continue to process. And then it might be when they're 16 or 17, or even when they're adults, like in their 20s, they, when they look back, if something else needed to be processed, just always normalizing it's okay to talk to somebody about this, even if it happened 10 years ago.
Okay. I'd wonder too. So I know we've been talking a lot about the smaller kids and things like that, but what about teens that that say they don't want to talk about it?
Yeah.
You ask them if something's wrong. Nothing's wrong, but
But you feel it.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can feel it.
I mean, I am kind of a proponent of going to therapy. I am a little biased because I am a therapist, but if you feel like your child isn't opening up for some reason, don't be afraid to just kind of accept that that's not something that they're ready to talk about with you as a parent. And a lot of times it's because they love you so much that they don't want you to know that they are hurting.
Okay.
It's kind of a weird phenomenon that teens and younger adults are like, I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I
Okay.
want to keep this to myself. And so having a therapist there, who can spend some time building rapport and with them and saying this is a safe place to open up, I think that can really be such a huge benefit, especially if they're not very open, but you feel like there's something going on.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't want them to turn to the wrong things,
Right.
whether it's trying substances to cope with things, or hanging with the wrong crowd and things like that. So
Self-harm.
yeah, self
And I
harm.
was thinking about that too.
Yeah, and even if they're not opening up to you, and maybe so you're thinking about having a therapist work with them, there's also still opportunities to just make sure that they know that their house is a safe place. And so it's kind of like what we talked about last time of just making sure that you're being involved in your child's life and watching their favorite TV show together, or, going to the gym together, whatever it is, that you're making those routine times. Or I think, Erica, you were talking about making dinner, being in the kitchen. That could be a safe time to just kind of, where a teen can kind of let their guard down a little bit, and just kind of toss something out there. And then what's most important is how you respond.
Okay.
Because again, if they're hesitant to open up and they give you just a little bit of information, it is not the time or place to blow up.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
you have to keep, or blow up, or have like a strong reaction, or be freaked out. It's just, you kind of have to stay cool and calm and collected, and say, thank you so much for telling me that. Let's talk more about it. And then, when the kiddo leaves the kitchen, you can like
Oh my
freak. You're like, oh my gosh. And so, yeah, like, so making sure that you have that, keep that emotional stability, and you reach out to your friends and your family and your mental health professional or doctor, whoever, so that you're processing those emotions, so that your
You can
kiddo
help
can.
them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see that. It would be, be very helpful. Do you recommend that if, say your teen is having difficulties and they don't want to talk to you, do you recommend, reaching out to, like, saying something like to maybe their youth minister,
Mhm.
or even if, my kids were really close to my sister, and so, they would
Yeah.
probably talk to her sometimes, maybe before they would talk to me about certain things.
Mhm.
So, do you think it's wise to say, "Okay, I think something's going on. Can you
Yeah,
talk to them?" Or
absolutely. I think so. Or,
okay.
and just kind of, keeping it subtle, of,
Okay.
just letting the youth pastor know, hey, something's been a little off with so and so, or telling your sister. I know I have a nephew who's a teenager right now, and I get phone calls from my sister all the time, like, can you talk to your nephew? And so I just call him and I say, hey, how was your day? And just kind of keeping it casual, and then hopefully somebody will,
It'll open
eventually,
up.
It'll come up.
yeah, but don't go in with like, hey, I hear that this is
Yeah.
happening. Just keep it calm, keep it cool, collected.
Okay.
Because that will just make the kid mad and make them not want
Yeah,
to talk.
it'll backfire
Yeah.
on you. Absolutely.
Automatically get defensive. I think if
Mhm.
they start out with something light, like, "Oh man, you should hear what happened to me today," or something, and then maybe if you share something, they kind of
Yeah.
get in that feeling where they can
They
open up
can
and
open up and
share
share.
too.
And Erica, self-disclosure is such a good thing. A lot of times we don't want to tell our kids what we did when we were teenagers, but they need to know that adults make mistakes too,
Okay.
and that
Yeah.
we were there in those situations too. So even just kind of like saying, oh, I remember when I was a teenager, I did something that I regretted, but I'm glad that I lived through it. And just, not necessarily making light of it, but also saying, yeah, I messed up. I made a lot of mistakes, because we all did, right?
Yes.
And so just normalizing that, also kind of encourages a teenager to kind of open up, like, oh, you did this too, or this happened to you. You had this similar experience. I think it really goes a long way.
That's good.
I can definitely see that, sometimes they're like, you're just my boring mom. You're like, what? You did that, mom?
But everybody's gone through like a breakup, or been at least offered drugs or alcohol, and how did you respond, or how did it make you feel? You don't have to go into detail about all of these things, but you can at least say, I remember feeling that way, or
Yeah.
that's happened to me before.
I know I can think back on some stuff that was kind of scary at the time, and then to think that my kids might have to, experience some of that was always really scary. Knowing how to handle it. My kids were always really good about, it was bedtime. Everybody's kind of laying around. We'd always kind of congregate in one of the kids' rooms, and then just kind of lay around, talk about different things. And of course, I think at times they were prolonging having to go to bed, type deal. But sometimes that was when we had some of our best conversations. I love that, and I miss that sometimes. When my kids moved out and having that time, it's like, gosh, I didn't realize how much I really would miss it. So goodness, we've gotten so many good information on processing. Is there anything that we needed to go over that we haven't missed? Because I was trying to go back over the list, things that we did want to talk about. So if y'all catch something that I missed, let me know. Is there anything in particular you would like to share?
I would say, what I could do, Shari, is I can email y'all some just different resources that have
Awesome.
that will have like actual scripts for things to say. Like, if you aren't the best communicator,
I love examples of stuff. It's like, tell me how to do.
Yeah. So I can send that, and maybe y'all can post that on your Facebook.
Oh,
page.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And did you have any of those books that you wanted to share about maybe
Yeah.
grief and how to talk to your child?
So, y'all, I'm blanking right now, but I think
we put her on the spot.
The number one that I usually use is called The Invisible String.
Okay.
And it's such a special book because it's talking about that we're all connected. Every human on the planet is connected through an invisible string, and it's this invisible string of love. And there's a part where it says, well, am I still connected to grandpa up in heaven? And it's like, yes, the string goes that way too. And so it's kind of it's a sweet conversation starter. And then for both, this book, I would say for more teens and adults, is called Stone Soup. And that book is, it's a really cool way of just talking about some of the things that people experience when they're grieving. And it's kind of a recipe. Somebody's making something called stone soup, and it's a recipe that's all different parts of grief. And so I kind of use that with older kids or adults.
I've read one like that called Tear Soup.
Is it Tear? Oh, no. Maybe it is Tear
I
Soup.
don't know. I know
Tear
I've
Soup,
read one called
Ashley.
Tear Soup.
Yes.
And it
maybe.
Okay, well, I'm going to write down both.
Wait,
we'll check it out.
Stone Soup in Burleson?
Is it the restaurant?
Is it a restaurant?
Well, but no, there was a book called Stone Soup. I think we read it in school, but it was a little
It's
different.
a different. It's yes. Not so. Stone
Probably
Soup is a
Tear
fun
Soup.
book, probably. But
You think it's Tear Soup?
It is Tear Soup.
Tear Soup.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ashley. What
That's
did you
a
think
good
about
book.
it?
I loved it. I've read it a couple years ago when I lost someone to suicide, and then about a year ago my grandma passed away. Pulled it back out, and I shared it with my family members because we were all just grieving my grandmother, and we all kind of read it. It talks about all the different ways that you can cope with grief, the different emotions you might have, and how you might make it with a friend, or then you're all alone, so you're making it by yourself sometimes. And she always has I love my dog, and she always has her dog with her. It's a really good book. Yes. And then at the end they have like a bunch of, like, they kind of spell it all out for you, like a bunch of practical tips on how to cope with grief, and or if someone is dealing with grief, how to be there for them. And it's a really good book.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved it.
Sarah, would you mind like recapping the 5 stages of grief?
Oh, well, you know what, Erica? I will say real quick, that's a very controversial theory. And grief does not always look in that, beautiful, like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. What's most important is however you react. That's a normal way to react.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you want to be angry, be angry. If you want to be sad, be sad. And if all of those things, and if you, sometimes you might
I
also
think you kind of bounce back and forth.
Yeah, you bounce back and forth.
That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would feel angry or hurt, and different stages, and kind of go back and forth.
And there's no
Comes in
wrong way.
waves.
Yeah, it comes in waves. There's no wrong way to grieve.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We got a lot of really good information. I know we're down to the last few minutes before we leave. You can find the information at the Healing Collective DFW.com. That's your website. Is there any other contact information that you want to share?
No, that's it for
That's
now.
the best way?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank y'all very much. Enjoyed having you on this evening. Please join us again next week. Actually, I think next week is Thanksgiving week. So it'll be the week after. Yeah.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, JOCO Community Radio.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed